All right, so buckle up, everyone, because today we are going deep, and I mean deep, into the world of organizational design with J.R. Galbraith's Designing Organizations.
Oh, designing organizations, a classic.
Yeah, this is not just, skimming the surface. We're
Yeah.
going for the real nitty-gritty
Yeah.
and figure out how to actually use this stuff, whether you're, leading a company or just curious about how the heck these companies we see every day actually work.
I love that.
Like BMW or even, Rovio, the Angry Birds people. They're all in this book.
It's funny you should mention that because I think what's so great about Galbraith's approach is that he doesn't just give us like a bunch of abstract theory, right?
Yeah.
He gives us a really practical framework for understanding how organizations work.
So a framework, like a model,
Yeah.
is something we can use.
Yeah, he calls it the STAR model.
Yeah.
And this thing, it's like a decoder ring for companies.
Okay, star model, decoder ring. I like where this is going.
Yeah, so it's all about understanding how these 5 crucial elements all work together to make an organization successful or not.
5 crucial elements. Okay, lay it on me.
All right, so you got your strategy, your structure, your processes, your rewards, and your people.
It's like the ingredients in a recipe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And just like a recipe, you can't just change one ingredient without thinking about how it will impact the others.
Ooh, so you're saying if you want to tweak something, you can't just tweak it in isolation.
Right, you got to look at the whole system.
You got to think about those ripple effects.
Yeah, Galbraith gives this great example of a company that was trying to, revamp their supply chain,
Mm-hmm.
get all fancy with these data-driven processes.
Sounds good. Sounds efficient.
On paper, it was brilliant, but they ran into a wall because they didn't think about the human side of the equation.
The human side. Oh, so this is where it gets juicy.
Oh, yeah. So these new processes meant that decisions had to be made at a higher level, which meant changing the organizational structure.
Ah, I see. So people on the ground.
Exactly. People who were used to, calling the shots on the factory floor.
Right.
Suddenly they had less authority.
Oof, that's got to be tough.
You can imagine how well that went over.
Yeah, not well, I'm guessing.
Not well at all.
Huh.
They had all this resistance. People felt like they were being, pushed aside.
Yeah, change is hard, especially when it impacts people's sense of control.
Absolutely. And to make matters worse, they didn't even think about the skills needed to manage these new data-heavy processes.
Oh, right, because you need people who can...
Exactly. You need people who can analyze the data, make sense of it, and make decisions based on it.
So they had to bring in new people, retrain existing employees.
Exactly. And that also meant tweaking the reward system.
Ah, right, to attract and retain those folks.
It's a chain reaction, you see.
Wow, yeah, so many moving parts. It's like a complex machine.
It is. And it all starts with understanding the basic building blocks of organizations, which leads us to the most common starting point for many companies. The functional organizational structure.
Functional organization, break it down for me.
All right, so this is your classic setup with specialized departments.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing, sales, finance, operations, you name it.
Each department with their own expertise, their own little silo.
Exactly. And even giants like BMW with their, complex global operations are built on this foundation.
So it's the bedrock even for the really big players.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. So how does this, seemingly simple structure handle growth? Because, companies start small, they get big, things change.
Right, and that's where it gets interesting. Galbraith uses this great example of Rovio, the Angry Birds folks.
Yeah, those guys.
They started out as this tiny team, everyone doing a bit of everything.
Scrappy startup style.
Exactly. But then, boom, Angry Birds explode.
Global phenomenon, right?
Yeah, suddenly they're managing millions of downloads, merchandise deals, maybe even a movie in the works.
Wow, that's a lot to handle. I bet their little startup structure just couldn't keep up.
It completely crumbled. They had to evolve quickly or risk, drowning in their own success.
That's a good problem to have, but still a problem.
Oh, absolutely. And it wasn't always a smooth transition.
I bet there's some bumps along the way.
Oh, yeah. Galbraith talks about this hardware company that switched from a sales to a rental model.
Okay, smart move, recurring revenue.
Genius move, right? But their accounting system nearly imploded.
Oh no, what happened?
They went from like a handful of invoices a month to a mountain overnight.
Oh wow, system overload.
Complete system overload. It was a stark reminder that even seemingly small changes to your business model could have a massive impact on your organization.
So you're saying you got to be prepared, you got to have the right structures in place to handle that growth.
Absolutely. And that leads to this idea that organizational design isn't a one-time thing. It's a constant process of adaptation.
Like a living organism, always evolving.
Yeah, like tending a garden, you're always pruning, planting, adjusting to make sure everything is thriving.
I like that analogy. So you got your structure, but even with a clear structure, I imagine companies need ways to like break down those silos, right? You don't want everyone just working in their own little world.
Exactly, and that's where lateral processes come in.
Lateral processes, okay, so we're talking about building bridges between those departments.
Exactly. It's all about connecting people across those silos.
So cross-pollination of ideas.
Exactly. Galbraith gives this great example of, a salesperson noticing a customer need,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just have a quick chat with an engineer, and boom, you've got a potential product improvement.
Right there on the front lines, that's cool.
It's organic innovation at its best.
Yeah, I like that. But lateral processes can also be more formal, right? Like companies can set up.
Oh, absolutely. You can have dedicated task forces to tackle specific challenges,
Mm-hmm.
or, in today's world, we're seeing a surge in technology-enabled coordination.
Ah, yes, the tech.
So you've got your Slack, your Microsoft Teams, your project management tools, all these platforms that allow people to connect and collaborate in real time.
So it's like virtual water coolers, right? People can chat, share ideas, even if they're miles apart.
Exactly. It's amazing how technology is both disrupting and enabling organizational design.
Yeah, it creates new challenges, but also opens up these incredible opportunities.
So we've talked about the how of organization, the structure, the processes, but now let's talk about the why, the strategies that drive those choices.
Okay, let's get strategic. So Galbraith focuses on single business companies, and he talks about three main strategic approaches: product-centric, customer-centric, and cost-centric.
Yeah, those are the big three.
So let's start with product-centric. What's
Okay.
the driving force behind that approach?
Product-centric companies, they live and breathe innovation. They're all about being the best in their field.
So they're obsessed with making the coolest, most cutting-edge products.
You got it. Think about a company like Nike. They're constantly pushing the boundaries of athletic wear.
Their shoes are like works of art.
Yeah, and they achieve this by using cross-functional teams.
Ah, so we're back to those teams again.
Yeah, so they bring together designers, engineers, marketers, salespeople, all the experts to work on specific product lines.
It's like a symphony of expertise.
Exactly. And as they grow, they often expand their product lines into new markets.
Right. Nike started with running shoes, but now they're in everything from basketball to yoga.
Exactly. They leverage their core competencies to tap into new opportunities.
Smart. Okay, now let's switch gears to customer-centric. I'm guessing it's all about, well, the customer.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
Customer-centric companies put the customer at the heart of everything they do.
So it's not just about building the coolest product, it's about building the product that best serves your target customer.
Right. It's about understanding their needs, their pain points, their desires, and tailoring your offerings accordingly.
It's like personalized banking or, those Spotify playlists that are curated just for you.
Yeah, great analogy. It's about creating a customized experience that resonates with each individual customer.
So how do these customer-centric companies actually, make this happen? How do they bake it into their organization?
It's a combination of technology and culture.
Okay, break it down for me.
They invest in things like CRM systems and data analytics platforms to gather insights about their customers.
So they're using data to understand their customers better.
Yeah, but it's not just about crunching numbers. They also train their employees, especially those on the front lines, to be more customer-focused.
So it's like building a culture of customer obsession.
Exactly. Everyone from the CEO to the cashier needs to be thinking about how to create a great customer experience.
Makes sense. Okay, last but not least, cost-centric. I'm guessing it's all about keeping those costs down, right?
You bet. Cost-centric companies are all about efficiency. They streamline operations, standardize processes, and eliminate anything that doesn't add value.
So they're lean, mean fighting machines. Can you give me an example of how this plays out in the real world?
Sure, think about functions like payroll or accounting.
Back office stuff.
Exactly. Instead of each department managing their own payroll or accounting, cost-centric companies centralize these functions.
Makes sense. Less duplication, more efficiency.
Exactly. And they might even outsource some of these activities to countries where labor costs are lower.
So they're always looking for ways to optimize their spending.
Absolutely. Now, in addition to these three classic strategies, Galbraith also talks about a concept that's becoming increasingly important in today's rapidly changing world: the reconfigurable organization.
Reconfigurable. That sounds intriguing. Is it like a transformer, able to shift and adapt to any situation?
That's a great way to put it. Think about a company that makes, let's say, snack foods.
Okay, I like snacks.
And let's say they discover this, revolutionary new ingredient.
Like some magical low-fat, super tasty ingredient.
Exactly. And they're able to use this ingredient to launch a whole new line of healthier snacks.
So they're capitalizing on a trend, meeting those evolving consumer needs.
Exactly. They're reconfiguring their offerings to stay ahead of the curve.
That's impressive. But I bet building a reconfigurable organization takes a certain, mindset, right? Not every company can pull that off.
You're absolutely right. It all starts with strong leadership.
So you need leaders who are comfortable with change.
Yeah, leaders who can navigate ambiguity, make tough decisions, and create a culture that embraces adaptability.
It sounds like a high-energy environment, lots of moving pieces.
It is. You also need robust information systems and streamlined decision-making processes to support that rapid adaptation.
So everyone needs to be on the same page, able to communicate and collaborate effectively.
Exactly. And the reward system has to be aligned with this agility too.
So you want to incentivize people to embrace change, to learn new skills, to be adaptable.
You got it. Think skill-based pay, performance bonuses, anything that rewards people for being flexible and responsive.
Wow, so it's not just about having the right structures and processes, it's about having the right people in place.
Exactly. Not everyone thrives in a constantly evolving environment. You need people who are comfortable with ambiguity, who are eager to learn, and who enjoy being part of a fast-paced team.
It's a whole different breed of employee, right? Not your typical 9-to-5er.
Exactly. Now, speaking of different breeds, let's talk about another fascinating organizational model, the network organization.
Network organization. Okay, what's special about this one?
Network organizations are all about managing complex relationships and leveraging specialized capabilities.
Okay, so instead of trying to do everything themselves, they partner up with other companies.
Exactly. Think of companies like IBM, Cisco, or Apple. They operate in industries where innovation is relentless.
So they need to be agile, move fast.
Exactly. And they've adopted this network model to tap into specialized knowledge and capabilities.
So it's like they're the conductors of an orchestra, bringing together all these different players to create something amazing.
That's a great analogy. And Galbraith uses the evolution of the computer industry as a prime example.
Oh, I'm curious, what happened in the computer industry?
Well, in the early days, you had companies like IBM that were vertically integrated.
They controlled everything from the chips to the software, right?
Exactly. But as the industry matured, it shifted toward a more horizontal model.
So different companies specialized in different parts of the process.
Precisely. And this created the need for a new type of organization, the network organization.
Makes sense. They became the experts at managing all these relationships.
Exactly. They use a mix of contracts, alliances, joint ventures, all sorts of arrangements to get what they need.
So it's like a customized approach to collaboration.
You got it. And within these networks, there's often a network captain, a company that plays a central role in coordinating everything.
Like the conductor of the orchestra, making sure everyone's in sync.
Exactly. And Galbraith highlights this great example of BMW. They're a network captain in the automotive industry.
Okay, so they're not just focused on building cars, they're also thinking about the health of their entire network.
Exactly. Galbraith talks about how they stepped in to help a small supplier who was struggling financially.
Wow, why would they do that? It seems like it would be easier to just find a new supplier.
They recognized that this supplier was a critical link in their supply chain.
Ah, so their failure would have had a ripple effect throughout the network.
It's a great illustration of how, in a network organization, everyone's success is interconnected.
It's like a symbiotic relationship.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears once again and talk about a different beast altogether. Conglomerates.
Conglomerates, those are the companies with like a million different businesses under one roof, right?
Exactly. Think Berkshire Hathaway, General Electric, these sprawling empires that operate in all sorts of industries.
Talk about a challenge for organizational design.
It's a huge challenge. One of the biggest questions is how much centralization you want.
So do you try to create a unified culture across all those different businesses, or do you give each one more autonomy?
That's the million-dollar question. And there's no easy answer.
So what does Galbraith say about this?
Well, he talks about the conglomerate discount, which is basically Wall Street saying, we don't always trust these sprawling beasts.
So the market is skeptical of conglomerates.
Sometimes, yeah. They often value conglomerates less than the sum of their parts, suggesting that diversification can sometimes be a drag on performance.
So bigger isn't always better?
Not necessarily. But Galbraith also highlights some shining examples of highly successful conglomerates.
Okay, so it is possible to make it work.
Absolutely. And we'll dive into some of those success stories in the next part of our deep dive.
I can't wait. But before we move on, I want to touch on one last concept that Galbraith emphasizes.
Synergy.
Synergy, the magic word.
Yeah, this idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. It's all about finding those hidden connections between different businesses or capabilities and leveraging them to create something truly special.
So it's not just about having a bunch of different businesses under one roof. It's about making them work together in a way that creates more value. Exactly. And organizational design plays a critical role in making this happen.
So, you need to create structures and processes that encourage collaboration and knowledge sharing.
You got it. Galbraith highlights two main models for achieving synergy: leveraging intellectual property and creating solutions.
Okay, let's break those down. Starting with intellectual property, what's that all about?
Think about a company like Disney, with their iconic characters and brands.
Mickey Mouse, Star Wars, Marvel, they've got it all.
They're masters at leveraging those assets across their different businesses.
Yeah.
Movies, theme parks, merchandise, you name it.
So they're squeezing every last drop of value out of their intellectual property.
Exactly. Now, the second model is what Galbraith calls solutions. Companies like IBM excel at this. They combine products and services from their different business units to create customized solutions for specific customers.
So it's like they're not just selling products, they're selling solutions to problems.
Exactly. It's a much more holistic approach.
And it requires a high degree of collaboration across different parts of the organization.
Absolutely. You might have dedicated synergy units or processes for identifying and prioritizing synergy opportunities, all sorts of mechanisms to make it happen.
It's like a well-oiled machine, all the parts working together in harmony.
Exactly. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, we need to talk about a force that's transforming organizations in profound ways: big data.
Ah, big data, the buzzword of the century. But seriously, how does it actually impact organizational design?
Big data is not just about the volume of information. It's about our ability to analyze that data, extract insights, and use those insights to drive better decisions.
So it's like having a superpower that allows you to see patterns and trends that were previously hidden.
Exactly. And this is having a massive impact on how organizations are structured and how they operate.
In what ways? Give me some examples.
Well, we're seeing the emergence of new roles like the chief data officer, who's responsible for developing a data strategy and overseeing the company's data infrastructure.
So data is becoming a strategic asset, just like financial capital or human capital.
Absolutely. And it's driving a shift towards real-time decision-making.
So companies can respond to market dynamics much faster.
Exactly. They can track customer behavior, monitor competitor activity, and adjust their strategies on the fly.
It's like having your finger on the pulse of the market, constantly adapting and evolving.
That's a great way to put it. And all this requires organizational structures and processes that can support this data-driven approach.
So big data is not just changing what we do, it's changing how we do it.
Absolutely. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about information, decision-making, and the very nature of organizations.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground here. It feels like we've just taken a crash course in organizational design.
It has been a whirlwind tour, but we're just getting started. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dive into even more fascinating examples and insights.
Can't wait. This is getting good. See you all in part 2.
So, one area where big data is really shaking things up is advertising.
Yeah, it feels like every website I visit knows what I want before I even search for it.
Right. It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, and maybe a little creepy.
Well, it's all thanks to big data.
Mhm.
Companies are moving away from those old school blanket advertising campaigns and getting way more personalized.
Yeah, so instead of one ad for everyone, they're using all this data to tailor their message to each person.
Yeah, like you said, each
Creative.
person based on, what they're browsing, their demographics, what they're saying on social media.
It's like a marketing laser beam.
Exactly, a laser beam. And it's not just about, getting the right message to the right person.
Yeah.
It's also about being super agile.
Agile, yeah.
Galbraith talks about how companies can actually respond to online conversations and feedback in real time now.
Wow, so they're always listening, always adjusting.
Exactly. They've got their finger on the pulse of the internet.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. He uses the example of that Old Spice campaign, the Red Zone body wash one.
Oh, yeah, I remember those ads. They were hilarious.
Right. So they made these funny videos, and then use social media to track how people were reacting.
Hmm.
And then they like tweak their message based on that feedback.
So they were like interacting with people, like having a conversation.
Exactly. And it was a huge success.
It felt very different from like those old school, TV commercials. It was way more engaging.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of, changing things up, big data is also revolutionizing how companies manage their supply chains.
Okay, supply chains, that sounds a little bit dry, but I'm sure it's important.
Oh, it's crucial, especially for companies like, Procter and Gamble.
Yeah, they've got like a zillion different products.
Right. And they've got to make sure all those products are available when and where people want them.
It's a logistical nightmare.
It is. But big data is making it way easier.
How so?
Well, they're using all this real-time data from sensors and tracking systems and analytics platforms.
To like keep tabs on everything.
Yeah, they can track inventory levels, they can see where shipments are, they can anticipate changes in demand.
So they're always one step ahead.
Exactly. And that means they can avoid delays, they can reduce waste, they can make sure that their customers are happy.
That's incredible. It's like they've got this control panel for their entire global operation.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then, of course, there's, product development and customer engagement.
Ah, right. The stuff that actually makes money.
Exactly. And Galbraith highlights Nike's digital sport division as a prime example of how big data is changing the game in those areas.
Okay, Nike Digital Sport. Tell me more.
So they created this platform called Nike Plus.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Right. So runners can use it to, track their performance, set goals, connect with other runners, and it's all powered by data.
So it's like having a virtual running coach.
Yeah, exactly. And all the data they're collecting is used to improve their products, develop new features, and personalize the experience for each runner.
So it's a win-win, right?
Right.
The runners get a better experience, and Nike gets valuable data.
Exactly. And that's just one example. We're seeing this kind of data-driven innovation happening in all sorts of industries.
What strikes me is that big data is not just some abstract tech thing. It's really changing how we think about information and decision making.
Yeah, it's a fundamental shift.
Like we're moving from a world of gut feelings to a world of data-driven insights.
Exactly. And that requires a different kind of organizational design.
Right, because if you're going to make decisions based on data, you need structures and processes that support that.
And you need a culture that embraces data and encourages people to experiment and learn.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about the people too.
Absolutely. Now, before we go too far down that road, I want to bring it back to that core concept, the STAR model.
Ah, right, back to the basics.
Yeah, because it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of big data and forget about those fundamental elements of organizational design.
The strategy, the structure, all that good stuff.
Exactly. Because you can have all the data in the world, but if your strategy's flawed or your structure's clunky, you're not going to succeed.
It's like having a Ferrari with a flat tire. All that power is useless if you can't even get out of the driveway.
Perfect analogy.
Well,
So let's revisit the STAR model and see how those 5 elements need to evolve in this era of big data.
all right, let's do it. Starting with strategy, how does big data change how companies think about their strategic direction?
Well, in the past, strategy was often based on, historical data, market research, and a lot of intuition.
Yeah, like a gut feeling.
Right. But now, big data allows us to be much more data informed.
So we can actually see what's happening, not just guess.
Yeah, we can analyze massive data sets to identify trends, to anticipate what customers want, to spot opportunities that we might have missed before.
It's like having a crystal ball.
It's powerful stuff. But it's not just about having the data. You got to know what questions to ask, what patterns to look for, how to interpret the results.
So it's not just about hiring data scientists. It's about building a culture where everyone understands data.
Exactly. It's about creating a data-driven culture.
Okay, so data-driven strategy. Got it. What about structure? How does big data impact how organizations are structured?
So those traditional hierarchical structures that we've seen for, centuries.
The top-down pyramids?
Yeah, those can actually become bottlenecks in a data-driven world.
Because information gets stuck in those silos.
Exactly. And decision-making can be slow and innovation can suffer.
So you need a structure that's more fluid, more adaptable.
Exactly. We're seeing a trend towards flatter organizations, where decision-making is pushed down to the people who are closest to the information.
And where teams can form and disband quickly to respond to new challenges.
Exactly. It's all about agility and responsiveness.
So big data is not just changing what data we collect, it's changing how we organize ourselves to use that data.
Right. It's a pretty profound shift. And then, of course, there are the processes
processes, the workflows, the how we get things done.
Exactly. And a lot of the processes that companies have been using, for decades were designed for a world where data was scarce and feedback was slow.
So they're not really built for the speed of big data.
Exactly. In a data-driven world, processes need to be much more dynamic and iterative.
Like more agile, right? Like how software is developed.
Exactly. We need to embrace experimentation, we need to be constantly learning, and we need rapid feedback loops.
So it's not just about doing things right, it's about doing the right things and being able to adjust quickly.
You got it. Now, let's talk about rewards. Because if you want people to embrace this new way of working, you got to incentivize them.
Right, you got to make it worth their while.
Exactly. And those traditional reward systems that were based on, individual performance or seniority, they're not always effective in a data-driven world.
So what kind of rewards do you need in a data-driven organization?
You need to reward collaboration. You need to reward experimentation. You need to reward people for being data literate and adaptable.
So it's not just about hitting your sales quota, it's about contributing to the overall learning and growth of the organization.
Exactly. It's about sharing knowledge, challenging assumptions, and helping the organization become more data-driven.
So it's a team sport.
It is. Now, last but not least, we got to talk about the people.
Ah, yes, the humans. Because at the end of the day, it's people who make all this stuff happen.
Absolutely. And in this era of big data, we need a different kind of workforce.
Different in what way?
Well, we need people who are comfortable with ambiguity, who are curious, who are lifelong learners.
So not just technical skills, but also like soft skills.
Exactly. We need people who can think critically, who can communicate effectively, who can collaborate across disciplines.
So like we're looking for these Renaissance people, right? People who are both analytical and creative, who are tech savvy and human-centered.
That's a great way to put it. We need people who can bridge the gap between the data and the human experience.
And that means rethinking how we recruit, how we train, how we develop our people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to create learning environments that foster those skills and mindsets.
So big data is not just changing how organizations operate, it's changing the very nature of work itself.
It is, and it's a really exciting time to be, studying all of this because we're seeing so much innovation and experimentation happening.
It's like we're at the frontier of a new era of organizational design.
Exactly, and who knows what the future holds.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing's for sure, it's going to be fascinating.
I can't wait to see what happens next. It's crazy, right? Like we've been talking about these organizational models,
Yeah.
but it's not just like a theory in a textbook. It's
Right.
like, it's everywhere.
It really is. Yeah, think about even just your daily life,
Mm-hmm.
like the grocery store, the hospital, the bank, any organization you interact with.
But yeah, they all have an organizational design, right?
Yeah, they have to function.
And now we have like this new way of looking at them, like
Mhm.
understanding why they're structured the way they are and how those choices like actually impact how they work.
Right, and how successful they are or not.
It's kind of like seeing behind the curtain.
Yeah, it's like you have this X-ray vision for organizations now.
I like that. And I think what's really cool is that
Yeah.
we can also use this knowledge to think about how these organizations might need to change in the future.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the world's not standing still, right?
Well, things are constantly changing.
And the companies that can adapt, the ones that can, embrace those changes.
Ones that can reconfigure themselves.
Yep, they're the ones that are going to thrive.
Yeah, it's not just about understanding what works today. It's about anticipating what's going to work tomorrow.
It's like being like a futurist for organizations.
It kind of is, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the real challenge, and the real opportunity, I think.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into designing organizations,
Yeah.
what are some key takeaways that you hope our listeners will remember?
I think the biggest one is that, designing an organization, it's not like a one-time thing.
Right.
It's an ongoing process.
You're always tweaking, you're always adjusting.
Yeah, just like a living organism.
Yeah, like a garden, we talked about that.
Exactly. It has to adapt to its environment.
So embracing change is crucial.
It's essential. Yeah. And that means being willing to, question your assumptions, to experiment with new approaches, to let go of what's not working.
So it's not about finding the perfect organizational design because there's no such thing.
Right. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
It's about finding the design that works best for you, for your specific situation, your goals, your environment.
Exactly. And that environment, that context, it's constantly changing. So you got to be ready to adapt.
That's a That's a powerful message. Now, as we sign off, what's like one thing you would encourage our listeners to do differently after listening to this deep dive?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think I would just encourage everyone to really look at the organizations they interact with,
Mm-hmm.
the companies they work for, the places they shop, whatever, and ask themselves, how is this organization's design affecting their success?
Yeah, like are they agile? Are they innovative? Or are they kind of stuck in the past?
Exactly. And what could they do differently? How could they adapt to this rapidly changing world?
It's like we've given our listeners a new superpower, the ability to see the world through this organizational lens.
I like that. Yeah, and I hope they use it for good,
Yeah.
to help build better, more effective, and more human-centered organizations.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Well, this deep dive into designing organizations has been a wild ride.
It has
We've explored so many fascinating
so many
ideas
different models and approaches.
and really, delved into the impact of big data.
Yeah, which is huge.
Yeah, it's changing everything. So, to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this journey.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope you've learned something new, that you're feeling inspired to think differently about organizations.
And to maybe even make a difference in your own organizations.
Exactly. So, until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep designing.